Welcome to Focus Today. I'm your host, Perry Atkinson, and wow, I am so honored that Chris Salcedo is giving us time. He's a busy guy, and I so appreciate him, and he's back with us today. He's a veteran broadcaster and the author of The Rise of the Liberty-Loving Latino, A New American Revolution. He's the host of the Chris Salcedo Show there on Newsmax TV, which you'll see it right here on the Dove channel as well, the Salcedo Storm podcast, and he's the executive director of the Conservative Hispanic Society. There's a picture of the cover of his book on the screen, and he does have a website, chrissalcedo.com, and there's a picture of the landing page. Chris, good to see you. Happy New Year, buddy.
Happy New Year, Perry. You know, I was watching you before I came on, and the passion, the preaching, and then to the point where you're knocking equipment over. That's good. That's just awesome.
Well, we're in it to the end, man.
Amen. Amen.
Good to see you. Thanks for your time. I value it greatly. A lot to talk about. What's your 30,000-foot view of Venezuela these days?
Hopeful. I think that Venezuela provides us a lot of, lessons here in the United States. As we watch our friends over in New York elect a Marxist, elect a socialist who is an out-and-out racist, I think we would all do well to remember, and Venezuela shows us this, that if you vote away your rights to a socialist, to a communist, there is no peaceful way to get those rights back. And you will ultimately doom yourself, your country, your family to poverty, to misery. And I think this is a cautionary tale. Thank goodness the people of Venezuela had somebody like President Trump in the Oval Office to give them a shot to correct the error of their ways. There is nobody else on planet Earth that could give America a second shot if we decide to go down the road that Venezuela went.
Well, it's pretty amazing because overnight everything has changed. His vice president has become interim president. Do you know what the term interim means?
Well, it's because there's going to be significant change in Venezuela. They needed to have whatever type of services in a socialist government you have, they needed to be maintained. One of the mistakes, it was told to me yesterday, that we made in Iraq was completely wiping out all of the government structure and starting from scratch, and that led to a lot of bedlam and chaos. So a lot of what is there somewhat stabilizing. I guess a socialist government is better than nothing, no government at all. So what she has pledged, this interim president has pledged that she wants to cooperate with the United States of America. It's amazing what a precise military operation that takes the head off a socialist snake will do, not only to the folks, the socialists who are left behind in Venezuela, but also to the despots and dictators in our own hemisphere who thought they would glad hand with America's enemies in China and Russia and Iran. Everybody's sleeping with one eye open these days because I don't know, Perry, how much you know about the operation that took place. But just so everybody knows and understands, our military personnel landed in a military base in Venezuela, took out 32 special forces from Cuba's Secret Service, and got Maduro, the illegitimate president of Venezuela, and his wife, extracted him out of the biggest military base in Venezuela, and got him to the United States for trial. So that is our reach, that is our capability, and President Trump is signaling to the world that we are not afraid to use that capability.
Let's unpack that a little bit, Chris. Why were Cubans surrounding the president and not some of his own military?
Well, because the socialist Venezuelan military wasn't all that in a bag of chips. Not that the Cubans were that much better. I mean, 31 or 32 of them are now dead, courtesy of American forces. And let's remember that it's Cuba that has been limping along the communist regime there with oil from where? Venezuela. And now that oil is going to go away. It's embargoed oil. It was illegal oil. And now that's going away. So there's going to be an entire sea change in our own hemisphere. We're kicking out China. We're kicking out Russia. We're kicking out Iran. They don't belong here in our hemisphere. It's the Monroe Doctrine with a booster shot from the Trump Doctrine, which is let's make money and not war. There was no war in Venezuela. The dictator is gone, and that's going to have a ripple effect across the entire region, and it redounds to nothing but positive for the United States of America and free people.
Given the fact that he was a fugitive, he was illegitimately became president, there was a bounty on his head for $25 million. Why is the left supporting him and not what has been done?
Yeah, and by the way, the $25 million was instituted, the bounty was instituted by Beijing Biden.
Right.
And President Autopen, right? And then President Trump, he upped that to 50 million to increase the pressure. Look, I have given up a long time ago in trying to psychoanalyze bat guano crazy people. And if you're a Democrat and you're voting Democrat still, I think that puts you under that banner. Because look, you people have gone from chanting just a little over 2 months ago that to no kings in our streets to free the dictator. I can't square that circle, Perry. I wish I could understand the psychosis of Trump derangement syndrome and left-wing thought. I've stopped trying to understand it. I just am committed to defeating it.
That's a good point, and I agree with you. Do you think the average American now is seeing through all this nonsense?
Yes. The average American, even CNN, is having to acknowledge that Americans don't like dictators. Americans don't like narco-terrorists. And President Trump's actions, not that he's getting a lot of backup from the Republicans, mind you, but President Trump's actions and the America First Coalition's actions are resoundingly successful, and Americans are noticing. And I think the vast majority of them are looking at what the Democrats are doing and saying, man, you people are never happy. I'll put it this way, Perry. When Ana Navarro of The View, part of the shrews of The View, actually comes out and supports what happened, you know that there's something different going on in the country now.
Okay. Let's see, where do I go so much here? Where do you think this leaves China?
Outside looking in, at least as far as our hemisphere is concerned, because remember, it's not just Venezuela. We were doing a lot of efforts in Panama to kick communist China out of there. And this is what your folks are going to be hearing a lot about: the oil. The president came out yesterday with a statement saying the sanctioned oil, 30 to 50 million barrels, which is a drop in the proverbial bucket, because we use about 18, 19 million barrels of oil a day in the United States. It is going to be, it's not insignificant because it signals more supply, which will drive prices down. You saw the Gas Buddy survey, I'm sure, Perry, that gas prices are now on average below $3 a gallon in the United States for the first time since 2020. Oh, gee, what was going on then? You know, the average price of a gallon of gasoline when Trump left office was $1.79. And then Joe Biden and the Democrat Party skyrocketed it on purpose to record highs. For those of you who are Democrats in the government-run education system, record high means it's never happened before, just so you understand. Right now, that's all being reversed. And you've got President Trump now seeing this oil coming in, and it's going to be setting the stage. The stock market in the United States, the stock market in Venezuela, they're all skyrocketing because brighter days are ahead.
The Monroe Doctrine is back front page and center, and I don't think in our lifetime, Chris, that we've ever seen a more consequential world leader, especially with the interest of the Northern Hemisphere as it relates to the Monroe Doctrine. What we're now seeing come to light is the president's policy on the Northern Hemisphere. And it's pretty amazing when you look at this. A lot of talk, but now we see action.
Yes.
What do you think?
Well, I mean, look, and this goes back to your previous question about what China is all about. Back in the day, it was the Soviet Union was the big bad communist power in the world, and the United States had made sure that all the adventurism that the Soviet Union had tried to launch here into the Western Hemisphere was defeated, and that was part of the Monroe Doctrine. As I said, Monroe Doctrine with a booster shot of the Trump Doctrine, saying let's make money, not war, but we're going to guard our own hemisphere, and we're not going to allow our own hemisphere's resources to compromise the safety and security of the United States. That will not happen. And I think everybody out there should understand who is upset about the Maduro regime falling. Well, communist China, despots and leftist dictators all over our hemisphere and all over the globe, and Democrats. They are all aligned. Now, who's happy about the fall of the socialist regime in Venezuela? Well, that would be freedom-loving people in the United States. That would be those who aspire to be free all over the world, and that would be real Americans. So when you look at the Monroe Doctrine finally being enforced, and let's be plain, and this is bipartisan, George W. Bush really wasn't too big into it, and neither was Joe Biden, neither was Barack Hussein Obama. Let's all remember that over the last 20 plus years, our national security has been farmed out, our best interests have been farmed out to individuals who have been bought and paid for by foreign governments. That stops under the Trump administration, and praise God, the Republicans get the message, and I hope that the folks in this audience will let them know as it pertains to all the fraud we're seeing right now at home. So we've got international concerns and the fraud here at home, all sponsored by a Democrat Socialist Party and a Republican Party that looked the other way and sacrificed us to them. That stuff stops, at least for the next 3 years.
Yeah, so well said. Where do you think this leaves Cuba, Nicaragua?
Sleeping with one eye open, and good. The fate of Nicolás Maduro, in this Liberty-Loving Latino's opinion, should be the fate of every despot and dictator, communist, leftist, Marxist, all over the globe. Justice ought to come to all of these people. There is no legitimate left-wing government. There is no legitimate socialist, communist government. Because I'm an American. Now, why do I say that? Because I am an American. That the founding principles of this country said that there is only one legitimate government that exists, and that is a government of, by, and for the people. Communist governments, socialist governments are the antithesis of that. So, by extension, Communist China's government is illegitimate. Cuba's government is illegitimate. Colombia's government is illegitimate. And the American people have got to wrap their heads around that concept. Look, we do it right when we do it. When we conform and comply with the U.S. Constitution, we do it right. And we ought to stop giving the imprimatur of legitimacy to governments who do it wrong.
Gosh, that's beautifully said, Chris. One other quick question before I take a break. Where does this leave the drug cartel up through the Central America and up through Mexico?
It's still, I don't want to paint too rosy a picture here, folks. We still have a lot of powerful people, and we have let's be honest, we have a demand in this country for these drugs. But I think once Americans start to get the message that these drugs that are coming in, fentanyl in particular, but I had to laugh, Perry. CNN actually hit the airwaves yesterday saying, well, you know, the cocaine, which is what Venezuela was primarily trafficking in, mostly to Europe, but some of it came to America. The cocaine was only responsible for only 22,000 American deaths. They were saying it to justify cheerleading for a dictator, a socialist dictator, as if 22,000 American lives in the minds of CNN are insignificant. And I don't believe that. Just because fentanyl kills 75, 100,000 Americans every single year on average, it is a problem. We have to recognize why it's a problem. So again, remember I told you about Democrats, about despots and dictators, and Marxists and socialists decrying the Maduro raid and bringing Maduro to justice. We've got to remember where the enemies of America are aligned. China, Russia, Iran, all aligned with these human smugglers, these drug smugglers. You are the company you keep. So let's all remember that. And you know what? I don't believe in hanging out with drug dealers. I don't believe that it's good company with narco terrorists. Our enemies do. And that should be a cautionary tale for those inside of our political apparatus who don't want to seem to do anything about these drug channels. They're still robust, Perry. There's still going to be a problem. But President Trump, if he gets some help, is going to be able to take care of that.
All right, let me take a quick break. What an honor. So glad. Thank you, Chris, again for your time. You can go anywhere, be anything, and you're a busy guy, and you give us a few moments. Let me say to our viewers and listeners, check out Chris's book, The Rise of the Liberty-Loving Latino. There's a picture of the cover of the book on the screen, available online, and then check out his website, chrissalcedo.com. There's a picture of his landing page. We'll take a quick break. We'll be right back. Okay, welcome back. An honor to have back with us today Chris Salcedo. He's a veteran broadcaster and the author of The Rise of the Liberty-Loving Latino. There's a picture of the cover of the book. He's also the host of the Chris Salcedo Show on the Newsmax television channel, which we carry here on the theDove TV channel. And he has a website, chrissalcedo.com, and there's a picture of the landing page. Wow, so much to talk about. Hey, I just want to, there's an old saying, you don't break God's laws break you. Covenant keepers win, covenant breakers lose. How do you see God in all this?
First off, Perry, the book that you've promoted so kindly for the last couple of segments here, it's very personal. It bears my moniker, and first off, you honor me by talking about it and letting the folks know about it. And I will just say, every single time somebody buys a book, an angel gets his or her wings. So I just want everybody to know that's what I. Okay. As far as God's, Ronald Reagan believed, and I do too, that this nation was set apart, a blessed land, he called us. And I, being a Reagan baby coming up in Gen X, I have adopted that same outlook. We just learned, and I would be remiss not to mention this, the passing of Michael Reagan, the son of the late president, just yesterday at 80 years of age, a frequent contributor, a weekly contributor on the Chris Salcedo Show. And I see God in the United States of America, and I remember Ronald Reagan's lament as he spoke at an ecumenical breakfast back in 1984 in my home state of Texas in Dallas. And he was saying that it is not an accident that the precursor to every great society's fall, every great nation's fall throughout human history, has been turning away from their God or gods. And I think that we are not immune in these once United States from that. The further we deviate from God, and I'm so overjoyed to hear these surveys of the Gen Z generation looking for God, recognizing the vacuousness of left-wing thought, of this me-centered culture that the left has set up in Hollywood and other places, that they've found out that it's all empty, that it's all Satan's empty promises. And the most populous generation we have, Gen Z, is now going back to church, trying to find that meaning, trying to find that definition that only God can provide. And as America returns to God, I believe our fortunes will get brighter. And the converse is true, that as we've turned away from God, our fortunes have dimmed. And that's what has allowed unscrupulous people to do some pretty bad things in this country, as all of the fraud investigations are revealing. You don't defraud the American people to the tunes of billions of dollars if you have what Reagan called a prompting of the conscience. You don't elect a Tim Awals from Minnesota if you have a prompting of the conscience. You don't elect Zorhan Mondani if you have a prompting of the conscience. Sick societies don't elect those types of people. You elect people with a conscience who believes that there is a God looking over their shoulder. What you do when you think nobody's watching is what defines your character, because you know God always is.
Yeah, that's so beautifully said. Do you think the faith community understands the threat of socialism?
Yes, and sadly, we're the only ones that do. I think that as secularism gets its boost in the popular culture, I think, again, I want to go back to Gen Z. They are the beneficiaries, quote unquote, of this secular society the left has decided they want to build. It's no accident that under Beijing Biden and President Otto Penn, that the federal government went after Christians and Catholics in particular. That's no accident. They are the prompting of the conscience that need to be rid of as far as the left wing is concerned. And a secular society is a sick society, and more Americans, I think, are starting to wake up to that fact.
Back to the fall of Maduro, and then what's happening in Cuba. We talked about Nicaragua. Mexico is still very much a problem. Colombia. What do you think that the average Latino voter is thinking in America?
I think I don't want to dare Perry to speak for all Latinos out there, but as I mentioned, you've got your liberty-loving Latino here, who is applauding what has happened. You've got Ana Navarro, who is a decided left-winger and a Trump enemy. I think that's fair to say, and she is applauding this. So I think with the Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez socialists and Marxists inside the Latino community, them aside, which is just like the society writ large, they are a minority. I think by and large, the immigrant community who came here legally looks at what is happening with Maduro and is overjoyed. I mean, I have friends who had family still in Venezuela, and they are going to be able to see their family members for weddings and all this kind of stuff. Now they believe because of the reforms brought on by President Trump. I've heard horror stories of since the fall of Maduro, of people disappearing, literally disappearing in that socialist utopia because they dared to speak out against the government. Now that's the Democrats' vision for this country, and you saw them implement it with all that lawfare they had launched against innocent people in the last 4 years of the Biden regime. So my hope is that that the Latino community continues to look at what's happening in the fall of these left-wing entities, whether they be at home or abroad, and continue to celebrate and recognize the good it is. So far, I can say it looks like the Latino community is mostly supportive of what's going on with the fall of Maduro.
Wow. One other quick question to Mondani there in New York. A radical Islamist socialist almost seems to be an oxymoron of words, but he's using socialism, in my opinion, to advance Sharia law. Do you think the average New Yorker sees this?
No, else they wouldn't have elected him. And let's not forget that his regime that he's putting together there is racist. They're openly talking about discriminating against white people, and they have been put on notice by the Department of Justice, Harmeet Dillon, saying that is illegal. You will be held accountable if you discriminate against anyone because of the color of their skin. That is not allowed. So the threat that is posed by the racist, socialist, Marxist regime inside of New York is real. Zoran Mondani, I don't even know if it's fair to classify. I think his God is government. I think his God is totalitarian power. Granted, there's a lot wrong with Sharia law. It's incompatible with the United States Constitution and ought not be in place. And I'm talking to you from a state that had Sharia courts recently discovered in North Texas, in Dallas. Right. And thank goodness our governor acted once that became known. But I would say to the governor of Texas, I would say to other officials, those courts should never have been allowed to be established to begin with. Our people have got to become vigilant. Sharia law is antithetical to the United States Constitution and our way of life here. And they ought to be, just like these Chinese police stations, they ought to be kicked to the curb, and those responsible for allowing those things to flourish ought to be held criminally responsible.
Wow. Quickly, 30 seconds, what do you want people to take from your book?
What I want them to take is that, well, back in World War II, we had the Allies were up against it, and when America joined the war, all of a sudden the tide turned. I want everybody to know who's a freedom lover, a freedom fighter in the United States of America. You just had millions of liberty-loving Latinos join that fight to keep us free and prosperous. And that's the takeaway I hope you get from the book.
It's called The Rise of the Liberty-Loving Latino, A New American Revolution. There's a picture of the cover of the book. Check it out online. And, of course, check out Chris's website, chrissalcedo.com, and certainly take in his show there on Newsmax. Thank you, brother. Honored to have you. Let's stay connected.
God's blessings, Perry. Thank you.
Right.